Today, we're going to jump back to 1979 and talk about a truly groundbreaking essay. It's called Dancing Through the Minefield by a critic named Annette Kolodny. And honestly, it's a total game changer. It asks a question that's so powerful, it basically changed the way we think about literature itself.
Just think about it for a second. When you were in school, who were the authors you had to read? Shakespeare, Homer, Milton, right? Well, this is the exact question that really kicked off a huge wave of feminist literary criticism back in the 70s. Scholars started looking around and asking, hey, why does the official story of literature, the canon, seem to have almost no room for women? And for so many women, this wasn't just some abstract academic problem. Kolodny just nails the feeling with this quote. It was a painfully personal distress. Can you imagine looking for yourself in the greatest works of your culture, and all you find are these narrow, limiting, and often tragic roles? That feeling, well, it fueled a really powerful desire for change. So what do you do about it? Well, they decided to rewrite the books. Not the novels themselves, of course, but the very history books that decided which novels mattered. This was the start of the first really energetic wave of feminist criticism, a movement that was ready to challenge this exclusionary literary world head-on. And man, the pace was just fast and furious. Critics started digging through archives, uncovering these incredible forgotten works by women, and bringing them back to light. They went back to all the male classics and reread them with these fresh, critical eyes, asking some really tough questions. They started to connect the dots between women writers to map out a totally distinct female literary tradition. And they even looked at the very building blocks of literature, language, plot, character types, to see how they were being used to reinforce existing power structures. And here's what that reshaping of the canon actually looks like. On the left, you've got the usual suspects, right? The familiar lineup. But on the right, these are just a few of the authors feminist critics brought back from the brink of obscurity. Writers like Charlotte Perkins Gilman and Kate Chopin, who are offering entirely different ways of seeing the world. Now, you'd think this work would be welcomed, right? Like, great, more amazing books to read. But no, that's not what happened. It was met with this incredibly intense hostility. And that's where Kolodny gets her title. She describes the whole experience as dancing through a minefield, where every single step, every new idea, risked setting off an explosion of criticism. And these are the kinds of things that were being thrown at them. Their work was dismissed as just angry political attacks, polemical misreadings. They were told their focus on women was too narrow, and that the books they were rediscovering were aesthetically questionable, which is just a fancy way of saying they weren't very good. But Kolodny had this incredibly powerful insight into what was really going on. She argued that the backlash wasn't actually about scholarship or art at all. The real threat, she said, was to a system that had for centuries reinforced a male sense of power and importance in the world. So when you question the canon, you're really questioning that power. So this is where Kolodny's essay really pivots. It moves from just diagnosing the problem to offering a real solution. She realized that just, adding more women to the syllabus wasn't going to be enough. The real challenge was to fundamentally change how we read. And to do that, she laid out this amazing blueprint based on 3 radical propositions. Okay, so this is the core of her argument, boiled down into 3 big ideas. First, literary history is a fiction. Second, we don't just read books, we read through things called paradigms. And third, what we think of as good art isn't some universal objective truth. Let's break each of those down. All right, first up, the idea that literary history is a fiction. Now, that sounds pretty dramatic, but it doesn't mean it's a lie. It means that the story we tell about which books from the past are important is a story we construct right now, in the present. It's a model we create to make sense of our own world. And the beautiful thing about that is, if we wrote the story, that means we have the power to rewrite it. Her second big idea is that we read paradigms, not just texts. So, what in the world is a paradigm? Well, think of it like wearing a specific pair of colored glasses. It's the whole set of assumptions and strategies you've learned that shapes what you look for and what you're even able to see in a story. So, for example, if you're only ever taught to look for a certain type of hero's journey, you might completely miss the point of a story that's structured in a totally different way. That training, that's your paradigm. And Virginia Woolf absolutely captured why this matters. She pointed out that a woman's perspective might value completely different things. So if your reading paradigm, your colored glasses, has only been trained on male writers and their concerns, you could read a woman's work and just completely miss the point. You might dismiss her most serious concerns as trivial because your glasses literally don't let you see their importance. And this brings us to the third and maybe the most radical proposition of all. And it starts with a really simple question. Who gets to decide what's good? For hundreds of years, that decision was made almost exclusively from one single perspective. Kolodny asks us to take a step back and question the very foundation of that judgment.
This is such a crucial shift in focus. Kolodny says that instead of just sitting around delivering verdicts on whether a book is great or not, we should first look at the tools we're using to make that judgment. Are our methods, are our paradigms, are our critical assumptions, are they actually adequate for understanding the full, amazing range of human creativity? Okay, so that was all the way back in 1979. Why does any of this still matter today? Well, because the legacy of dancing through that minefield goes way, way beyond the English department. It really gives us a blueprint for how we can think critically about the entire world around us.
See, Kolodny's blueprint is so much more than a literary theory. It's an incredibly powerful tool for critical thinking. It teaches us to always ask, who created the story I'm being told? What assumptions or paradigms are shaping it? And whose voices are being left out? And you can apply that to how we understand history, science, the news on TV, absolutely everything. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Kolodny and her colleagues question the literary canon. So what are the canons of today? What are the unquestioned stories, values, or histories in our own culture that maybe deserve a critical rereading? What minefields are left for us to dance through?